Reinfeld to get in from the waiting room. Please be advised that on November 20th, 2025 at 4 p.m., there'll be a strategic and capital planning meeting held through remote participation via Zoom. This meeting is being recorded. The meeting can be viewed live on Medford Public Schools YouTube channel, through Medford Community Media on your local cable channel, which is Comcast 9, 8, or 22, and Verizon 43, 45, or 47. Since the meeting is held remotely, participants can log in or call in by using the following Zoom link. The meeting ID is 940-9358-7447. Questions and comments can be submitted during the meeting by emailing Jenny Graham at medford.k12.ma.us. Those submitting must include the following information: your first and last name, your Medford street address, and your question or comment. Okay, I'll call the roll. Member Rousseau.
Present.
Member Reinfeld.
Present.
Member Graham, present. So 3 present, 0 absent. Okay, so our agenda for today is just to get ready to present our capital plan for the upcoming year through our established budget process for capital planning. And we're roughly targeting the second meeting in December, which is December 15th. Although if everything ties up in a bow and we want to do it at the next meeting, we can talk about that based on what else is on the agenda. And by way of a little bit of background for anybody listening, for the last couple of years, we have tried to kick off capital planning in this October, November timeframe so that we can collect all of the input and have a cohesive conversation about priorities, bring that forward to the school committee for agreement and adoption, and turn it over to the city council and the mayor's office by early next year, so that when they are looking at capital projects and as free cash gets certified, which tends to happen in the spring here in Medford, that they know sort of what is hot on our list of things to do. And then we can be talking about sort of what's on the critical path, et cetera. So this year, with Ken joining us in August, although it feels like a year from August at this point, Ken, he and I met and we talked a little bit about some additional inputs that we have this year that we haven't had before because of the facility conditions assessment index that was created and completed over the summer, where that assessment had, somewhere north of $60 or $70 million of capital projects outlined in the next 5 years anyway. Which is a daunting and staggering number. But Ken has done a lot of due diligence to kick us off. So my thought for today is we'll have Ken pull up the capital planning spreadsheet and walk us through what he's done to sort of integrate that facilities condition assessment, because he fell into the rabbit hole of the spreadsheet and it's pretty intense now. So I want him to explain that. And then we can talk a little bit about the things that are sort of on the top level of the plan and in the near term. And I do see Teresa has joined us to talk a little bit potentially about CPC oriented projects. So thanks for being here, Teresa. So Ken, I will turn it over to you if you want to walk us all through the spreadsheet and sort of where all of the facility condition assessment stuff is and how it is all floating up. Before I do that though, I will mention to this group that a couple of weeks ago now, we were notified by the MSBA that the 3 statements of interest that we put in for roofs and HVAC at Missituck, Roberts, and Brooks were all approved. So we went to the board meeting. Those 3 projects are all approved. So obviously that's a huge component of that, $60 or $70 million, obviously. There's some work that has to happen between now and February that we're sort of working on behind the scenes to get going. But the priority, the order of projects there will be Roberts, Missatuck, and then Brooks, based on particularly the aging of the roof and the HVAC systems. So more to come on that. Obviously, those are like on the plan, but those are a little bit different because they're already sort of actively in this like MSBA funding pipeline. So all good news, honestly. Like I'm so excited that we were able to get all three of those into the pipeline, and not have to wait 2 more years to even think about talking about some of those things. So that's great. Ken, I'll turn it over to you if you want to walk us through your spreadsheet.
I'll show you. You should be able to see the spreadsheet now on your screen.
Yep.
Okay. So what I did was I took the facilities condition assessment report, which is a voluminous document, and I received the Excel versions of this, and I imported it into different tabs. So this is the totals page, which shows all the items from the FCA. And then there are tabs for each school, which has all of their items on that sheet. I then went through and I kind of categorized everything in the for each school in a budget location, moving them to ARP, which stands for Accelerated Repair Program. That's only for the Brooks, the Roberts, and the Missatuck, doors and windows, electrical, fencing, so on and so forth. I also marked a number of them as operating, which are things I felt we might be able to accomplish through our extraordinary repairs account or through regular maintenance work. So I categorized everything as best I could for those. Off to the right, you'll see operating tabs for each school. That just pulled all the things that I categorized as operating into one tab, so you could review those specifically if you wanted to. I did a lot of work on the capital plan document tab, but really what I did after our meeting this week is I made a prioritized list of everything from the capital plan and pulled those pieces of data to this one tab. So basically, the suggestion I have is, of course, the ARP projects are the most important. These are, you'll see two numbers here. This is for the feasibility study and then the project itself. And these are the Medford portions of the amounts. I do have a separate spreadsheet that talks about all the numbers and everything and the square footage and whatnot and the total project cost that it's estimated for the heat pump and roof conversion. I'm sorry, the heat pump conversion and roof projects, as well as some ADA work that might fall into there. There is a lot of discussion about what the budget number is for that. The MSBA quotes $150 a square foot, which is what I'm basing this on. I did reach out to Habib, who did the facilities connection assessment report, and they're getting some information from one of their estimators, to see if the 150 really holds true or not. So these numbers here that I have for the schematic design and the project for the ARP may come down some. Beyond that, I pulled out a number of things from the facilities condition assessment report, as well as from feedback from principals. The fire alarms are listed in the facilities condition assessment report for the 5 buildings as being aged out, need to be replaced. To do a project like a fire alarm, we really need to have a study done. You need schematic plans done. You need code review. It's not something we could write a specification up for ourselves. I reached out to Habib and asked them to give an estimate for what he thought those might cost. And surprisingly high, he suggested $225,000 for design for all 5 of those. So I just split them out, for each one. We would probably have to split these out over multiple years to do the projects because these are the price tag of the projects. They're all north of $400,000, with the McGlynn being almost double that. So they are big projects to do. Those fire alarm systems are, particularly at the Brooks, the Missatuck, and the Roberts, are at end of life, and they're getting hard to find replacement parts for them. So that's what's in the capital. This column here, I'm not sure if this is titled correctly. This would be the ARP money, the Accelerated Repair Program money. You'll notice that the Brooks only has the schematic design portion, because the schematic design would happen pretty far into FY26, so the project would probably be in a further year out than this. I did include phase 2 of the network refresh. This would be our portion. This is a rough estimate right now because we're going through some plans reviews with just from phase 1, which is the high school, and then the which needs some extra equipment, and for the rest of the schools, this would be our portion, as this would be an E-rate project. So E-rate reimburses us 60% of the project. We only cover 40, which is a wonderful thing. I do have intercom upgrades for the Andrews and McGlynn. These are also at end of life and parts are not available. We have had some significant issues with Andrews. These are a public safety issue. We do have, this is how they announce everything for, from, fire drills and everything else they talk about on these intercoms. These quotes here are from a vendor. These are rough budget numbers. These will need some refinement if we move these projects forward with more design and specification, but that's a pretty good number there. The playground renovation, we discussed the need to do a feasibility schematic design for the 3 playgrounds, having a firm look at what options we have for different playgrounds, what designs, all that stuff. The Habib provided this estimate here, which seems a lot of money to me. So we may need some more refinement there. This would cover all 3 designs and give you complete documents to be able to bid those out. One of the first principal items, Nick Tucci has 10 cafeteria tables that are in need of a replacement. He has 32 total tables. This would cover 10 of the replacement that he says are immediate. They do probably need to be scheduled out in future years to replace the rest of them. And we should look at some of the other schools, but Nick has 10 that he has trouble with right now. The next priority I listed was paving. There's quite a bit of paving money listed in the feasibility study, but in order to put this out to bid, we need designs, surveying, all kinds of stuff. So we do need to pay an architect to do all of that work. Habib, again, just supplied a rough estimate of what that might cost for those. Again, we may decide to split these up over multiple years because this is an awful lot of work to be done. This is parking lots, driveways, sidewalks, curbs, stuff like that. A lot of work there. A small item at the McGlynn, the condenser for the fridge and freezer walk-ins units needs to be replaced. It's original to the building, still uses R22 gas, which you can't even get anymore. That should need to be done. I don't know if we have room to include that into the current McGlynn Andrews HVAC project. We did have them quoted out, and because quoting it out through them, through the project, everything else, it's many times more than that to do it through them. We can do it much more efficiently out of the project with a separate contractor. The next section is doors and windows. These are rusted door frames. Doors would need to be replaced, glass bloom, screens, all kinds of stuff like that. These are directly out of the facilities condition assessment report. Unlike the fire alarm and the paving, this is a spec we could write ourselves. It's not a complicated specification to write, and we can put those out. I see Paul has his hand raised.
Yes.
Right, hi, Paul.
Hi.
Everybody was like, had a bar across their face, so I didn't see anything.
I'm assuming it's probably impossible to quantify, but those doors and windows to me there's going to be savings on heating and cooling and heating and cooling. Or are they in fact not in a state where we can expect anything like that?
I don't believe you would see a substantial or even detectable change.
Okay.
Most of the windows, these issues is that some part of the seal has failed between the multiple panes, and so they're fogged and glassed in there. Is that going to impact some part of the insulation property of the glass? I'm sure, but I don't know that it's something you'd perceive as a change.
Okay, thank you.
This is the rusted door frames and things like that. Those are becoming mechanical issues. But yeah.
Windows that are in need of like the resealing, is that like what happens if we don't do that?
So right now the glass has become clouded. You can't see through it. And then eventually it will become an issue where the gas will fail more and more, and it become more of an insulation factor of an issue. So the windows are not broken. There's screens missing. There's other things like that. but it's not about danger. It's about being able to use the window and see through it. Mainly, that's what the main issue there. So like if we looked at the Andrews, and if I just filtered out doors and windows, these are the kind of things they're talking about.
I am always surprised how much a screen actually costs. I have anyone at home and I'm like, I don't need one that bad.
Yeah, yeah,
I live in an old school. I see this a lot.
yeah. So that's kind of what that's. And some of these estimates, I mean, all of their estimates, they're applying a factor to square footage. So, you know, these prices may come down a little bit when we get specific to actual replacements and things like that. But this is how they estimated things. Railings to the Karen Theater at the high school. We have not, we have not received the quote for this yet. So this is a guesstimate at this point. Any number in gray is a gray number essentially. We don't have a real great number for that, but this is what I'm estimating at this point. This would add railings along the left and right going up the staircases for patrons to be able to hold on to something as they walk up. We do have some damaged seating at the McGlynn. This would replace a section of seating with new seating and allow us to use those as parts to continue to repair what's broken and to continue to repair as we go down the road. Nick has requested flooring and rug replacement at the auditorium and the library. This is a rough number from this. I pulled from another school. This needs some more work as far as getting a better number for this, but it's pretty far down the list. And then we have the intercom upgrades at the other three schools. I ranked the Andrews and the McGlynn much higher because they're 2 years older. So they're in an out year now, but I left them down here. If there was things we traded, moved around, they might enter into the capital report. So that's kind of the high level list that we have. We can certainly go through this sheet here, which has the prior year things in progress, items that were funded and put in other areas, some finished projects that were in here. These were the new items section, which I drove the categories for. And then down the bottom is the accelerated repair program totals for each school and categories they fall in. I should have mentioned earlier, the facilities condition assessment report categorizes things in three categories. Priority 1 is immediate. They're saying we should do now. Priority 2 is in 2 to 5 years. Priority 3 is 5 years or beyond, which I didn't total out here. And the bulk of it is in the ARP. So.
Back to the FY27 prioritized list. I had a couple of questions. I'm sure everybody does. One of my questions is about number 3, the phase 2 of the network refresh.
Oh, this, yep.
So the 350 is what remains in order to complete the project.
Our portion.
And what's that?
Our portion.
That's our portion.
Yep.
And was that already allocated to us?
That I don't know. I'm not aware of that. I know that the project was originally like $1.5 million total, and it was too much for E-rate in 1 year. And Dr. Cushing had split it into 2 phases, and we've been allocated money in this fiscal year, and we had a little last fiscal year we can use. But I do not know if anything is in a future year, if this money is already allocated out as part of free cash or not. I really do not know. I don't know if Noel knows. He's on.
The allocation was a one-time allocation. But I think I would have to go back to my notes to know. So this is our portion
of phase 2. That's yeah.
And the rest would be paid for by E-rate?
Correct.
Okay.
That's 40% of the cost of phase 2.
Okay. I don't feel like maybe we didn't talk about phase 2 because I don't remember a number that big, but.
So it was one number before, and then late in June, it was split into 2 phases. Initially, it was proposed as one big phase.
And I do remember this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know how that impacted any allocation of money though.
That I don't know either.
Okay. And my other question was about the playground renovation feasibility piece. If you could talk a little bit more about that. I know Teresa's on the call as well.
Sure. We have 3 more playgrounds to renovate, the Brooks, the Roberts, the Mistook. We need to do kind of a design and feasibility study of what we want to do and how we want to do it and that sort of thing, and whether or not, there's alternate locations, perhaps with some nearby areas that we could do some other playground work. This was the number that Habib just threw out there as a potential cost for that type of a study. Seems high to me. I have not had a chance. He just gave it to me today. I didn't have a chance to have another conversation with him about it.
Okay. I think our McGlynn study was $50,000. But
This
it
is
was
pretty-
it was a design study. It was not a feasibility study. So it
Yeah.
was different.
And maybe that's what we need is just a feasibility study, and maybe it's 50 per and it's 150.
Yeah.
This was just a number he put out there just over email, quick, trying to get some quick and dirty numbers from him when we discussed it this week.
And I wanted to thank Teresa for joining us as well. I don't know, Teresa, this came up and we were talking about whether the CPC would fund such a feasibility study like across, the three remaining schools, and just to get a better understanding of any thoughts that you have that we might want to consider as we think about potentially putting together a CPC application
Yeah,
for this.
yeah, certainly. Thank you for having me, Teresa DuPont. I'm the Community Preservation Act Manager for the city, so I help support the program and the committee that funds these programs, these types of projects. So I also agree that the 350 number is a bit high, especially if this would be all under one contract rather than we do one school 1 year, the next school, blah blah blah. So I feel like that number is probably closer to about 200,000. Just based off of past projects and acceleration in costs that we're seeing across the board. In terms of timing, please forgive me. Am I understanding this correctly? Is this for fiscal 27 outlook or things we're trying to accomplish this year? And I ask for grant deadline reasonings. Our annual funding round has already passed for fiscal 26 funding.
Yeah,
so
this would be for your next funding round.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't want to get any hopes dashed if this was something that we were looking to do quickly. But yes,
No.
this would be a welcome application for fiscal 27.
Okay. And I think, one of the things, one of the reasons why we've been talking about this potentially as a feasibility study, the last year, when we did our capital plan, we identified that there are in fact 3 playground renovations, still to go. And we identified that the Roberts is our priority. But it is objectively the most complicated project that we'll see because it is the tightest on space. And at the time last year, the conversation was around like, we should not be just trying to like make a new playground until we address the fundamental space issues at the Roberts. In some more like fundamental, sustainable way. So at Brooks and Mistatuck, the situation is a little bit different. There is space, and how the space is used certainly could benefit from modernization, and the equipment is quite old. So all of that is true. But at the Roberts, in addition to all of that being true, they're very space constrained. And that is something that we're going to have to grapple with, which would be part of the feasibility study here. Like, what else can we do to support that school community? And how might we go about thinking about it? So that's
Right.
part of that feasibility study.
Mhm. I would
design.
I'm sorry. I would highlight that CPA would be eligible for any portion of the feasibility study that would be for outdoor recreation space
Mhm.
that serves a public benefit. So if there was some thoughts of redesigning the actual interior to accommodate more exterior space, that element of it wouldn't be eligible, but we would figure that out in the dollar amount calculation. So just wanted to put that out there as a caveat.
Perfect. And the inside is quite full as well. So there's probably not a lot of opportunity to do anything like that, but
Understood.
you never know, how this all shakes out when you get the right people looking at the problem. So that's helpful to know. Paul and Erica, do you have questions about this tab?
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, do you want to?
I actually have a question about the definition of outdoor, because one of the things as part of the school building project for the high school, Waltham, although they had plenty of land, I'm a little confused why they decided to do this. Decided to have their it was not a playground, it's a field actually on top of, it's just an elevated field for which parking is underground. And without eminent domain and taking somebody's house nearby, there's no TARDISes and Time Lords to make us have more room without more room. And so one of the thoughts that I know that I've been bantering around is, could we put parking under, not underground, just having the playgrounds above parking? So I guess my question is, what is the definition of outdoor recreation space with if it was elevated above at grade parking? Is that something that hasn't even been considered?
In terms of how, we have to be careful under Community Preservation Act law about what is the definition of outdoor recreation space. Some municipalities, it's kind of, I don't want to say ambiguous, but it does kind of differentiate from municipality to municipality. Some just say it's a blanket, any publicly owned parcel that's under Chapter 97 protections. In Medford, our school playgrounds serve as public playgrounds. They're not isolated or exclusive to school use during non-school hours. So in Medford, that type of a project, we wouldn't be able to fund any of the creation of the parking or the surface in which the playground would, well, actually, maybe possibly the surface of the playground. If I'm envisioning your scenario correctly, we couldn't create the parking, but we could make it pretty at the end of it with recreation space, recreation use, public amenities on top. Does that answer your question, Paul?
It does. I know it's
Okay.
I mean, other than, I think there's a few places that have gone this route because it is in fact more expensive, but I'm sure it's not nearly as expensive as eminent domaining a building.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Of course.
Erica, do you have questions?
I mean, I think most of my questions are going to come up when we start prioritizing and moving things around, because I'm looking at the paving and I'm wondering which of those issues are accessibility issues and which are kind of general wear and tear, but they're not posing an immediate accessibility issue. But I guess that's what the study is going to be addressing. Member Russo, actually, I also had the question about parking underneath a playground space. And what was my other piece was, yeah, around the playgrounds, and the McGlynn playground was a very community oriented program. And so whether these quotes were around updating what's there or really rethinking the space. And that seems like it could be the definition between that feasibility study and the design study. So I think most of my questions are going to come up when we start prioritizing, because my big one is around what are these things that maybe they might not be big and urgent, but if we wait, they compound later. So I'm ready to keep going, I think.
Okay.
To answer your
And-
question about the paving, so the McGlynn and the Andrews, they've already addressed the ADA issues of
Yeah, I
plazas and
remember that.
sidewalks. I'm not aware of major issues at the other three elementaries. These are mostly parking lots, curbs, worn out sidewalks, things that are starting to, there are some areas where there's heaving and other things that are causing things, but a lot of it is more in the wear and tear category.
And can none of these paving projects include repaving Freedom Way?
Correct. No, that is now, I just found out yesterday that with Tim McGivern, that is now
City
accepted as a
property.
street, and that they have not done any improvements, but they're planning something in the next few years. Because it's no
Can you,
longer a school driveway.
Correct.
at first I didn't know if you could hear me. I would, to the paving piece though, say that the Missatuck, we have to wait to see what the study brings, but I would say that the Missatuck has a slight prioritization over the other buildings, especially around the pathway from the staff parking to the school. There's quite a gap that does pose, it's blocked off right now because it does pose a
Big
safety
spot.
issue.
No.
And then the front walkway does have some work to do with the Missatuck. So I would say that that has a higher prioritization than the other buildings, but the study will, I think, illuminate that more. And then I also, in addition, because I also had the Roberts pieces that member Russo and member Reinfeld have already elevated, but I also have a question around the timeline. Because the Roberts, unlike the other three buildings, there is no option for outdoor play when this work is happening. So the McGlynn was able to go and use Hormel. Right. They were able to work something out. There's also field space, in the back. Both the Brooks and the Missatuck have adjacent space to go to, and the Roberts does not. So I also would have a question around timeline to see if there's a way to have the least amount of impact to student recess.
And Missatuck may have trouble getting to that outside space, adjacent space. The playground's kind of in between them.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that the Missatuck and the Brooks have is that you could do one and not the other, so you're not like obliterating both playgrounds at the same time, although there probably are some like real like cost trade-offs because I'm sure it's easier for them to come in, take it all down, put it all back together. Having said that, the scale, like to me, I think what I'll be interested to learn about in the feasibility design process is the scale of what we were able to do at McGlynn was made possible by its space. Like some of those pieces of equipment are very large and would like consume the whole lower playground at the Brooks, right? Like one piece of equipment would sort of be the whole space. So I think the scale of those playgrounds is certainly a question that will be really interesting to like ask and answer, and to like balance that with the needs of those school communities in general, so that those playgrounds are just as accessible. I think at the McGlynn, we enjoyed that the space was not the problem, right? Like there wasn't really a space issue that we had to grapple with. And so we were able to do some really interesting things. So, but my assumption is all of that would become clear during during these design processes. And so, Teresa, I think the other question procedurally that I had is, way back when we just simply did resurfacing of these playgrounds, and when actually the McGlynn design study came to be the thing that we did first, we were advised that each school had to go in as its own independent request to CPC. And I think what Ken's trying to say here is we would like to do one study so there can be some economy of scale across the three properties, instead of having to like be in a situation where we are funding like kind of one at a time and like starting from scratch with potentially a new vendor each time this happens. So could you talk a little bit about whether we would be permitted to do one project that would span all of those buildings?
Certainly. I do see that the committee would very likely want to see these come in as separate projects only because they would evaluate each project for the merits of the public benefit that it would serve. So would the Missituck having, and I'm just spitballing here, and
Yeah.
I don't speak for the committee, I can only speak from my experience with them. They would evaluate the Missituck project and then pit it against the Roberts, and they would
We
pit
don't
the
want to do.
Roberts against the right. So, but that's how they would have to evaluate each project. So that's not to say that they wouldn't fund all three in the same funding cycle, but I would foresee them requiring them as separate applications. Just because again, they would have to evaluate it as a standalone project in their eyes. I think that they would obviously understand the cost savings there would be with lumping them all together. And I believe that would be factored into their consideration strongly. But, and I may very well be wrong here, but if that's what the past committee has wanted to see, and me having experience with our current committee, I think that's what they would want to see, unfortunately.
Krista, did you have a question?
Nope, it got answered.
Okay. And Teresa, is that an answer? Like, when do we seek that answer?
That does come through our eligibility determination process, which is
Okay.
basically like a pre-app. However, this since this something that's being discussed now in a public setting, certainly we could bring it to the committee now just to get their gut check. It's not an actual application, just this is what we're thinking. How would you respond to this? And that can be considered on our December 9th meeting or our early January meeting.
I think it might make sense to ask you all to consider that in maybe your January meeting, because then we'll have like passed this through the school committee in terms of its priorities. And I think having that answer would just allow us to do the work to like build the documentation that's needed in the right way the first time instead of sort of having to scramble at the end. So I think that would probably be very useful.
Yeah, I can put together like draft a memo based off of this conversation and kick it to this team for you to review.
Right.
And then we can go from there. Happy to put that on our agenda.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Pam? I also think that when that meeting happens, we're gonna do them all. So, it's the money saving approach. I mean, whether we do them one every year, or we can get them all done at once. And I realize what else is on the plate is a big key part of that. Or what other potential projects are sitting there. But just thinking about how the money gets spent, I mean, we're gonna keep coming back. So hopefully
Sure.
we figure out how
Yeah.
to get.
Right. Yeah. And yes, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so Ken, if I am understanding the list correctly, this was your suggested priority for these projects for the next year, and it totals about $2.5 million of allocation for the FY 27 or sooner timeframe. Is that right?
My initial prioritization, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think Erica raised a question about prioritization. So I guess the thing that maybe Erica, if you want to ask your question and we can figure out whether there are priorities that need to shift here, would be the next conversation to have.
I had a pre-question on that, which
Sure.
is looking at our fiscal year 26 capital plan. Are we on track, or are there things that are getting bumped? Obviously, the phase 2 of the network refresh, we know that got split across the 2 fiscal years, but are we going to come up to May and go, oh no, we have to adjust the capital plan? Because how are we doing in our 26 plan?
The only one I know of that was a slip was the network.
Okay.
But the
'Cause I
only
know
one
HVAC got delayed, but we're
Yes.
still in this fiscal year.
Yes,
So
yes.
great.
Well, the HVAC project will extend into
Yes,
to the
but
summer.
we had,
Yeah.
that had been planned.
Yeah, yeah. We still have a few other smaller items on the capital plan, which some of which are in the operations. There's some air conditioning replacements and stuff. We're working on those, but they're small projects I don't anticipate not being accomplished.
Okay, and then this prioritization list is based on what is most likely to fail or present a clear and present danger to folks.
As well
That's-
as the study money setting up for the next year.
Right.
You know, so like if the paving couldn't make it, you know, we need to do the study for the paving, but if the doors and windows didn't make it, we could do that in the next year without having a study. Some of these bigger projects, you need to do a study and then fund it the next year. So it's kind of like setting up stuff for those. So.
Right, and because we did a chunk of studies this year and we're now seeing what comes out of that to do that
Yes.
work this year. So
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I'm open to, you know, there's a lot here. So it's kind of like, you know, there's some, you know, fire alarm was the most important thing I thought of.
Mhm.
So, like, I think the top level narrative is like we need to dig deeper on a number of fronts in FY26 so that we can begin doing the work so we're like in a fine enough position right now if we do these studies because it's going to take time and years to do the work. But that's true of fire alarm and paving, and playground renovation. And then there's some other things where like in FY26, we should be completing projects like the intercom upgrades and the, you know, doors and windows and that kind of thing.
27, you mean?
27, sorry.
Yeah. I went 26, I can't do it that quick.
And then I guess my other question is how squishy are these numbers when we go to other potential vendors, right? I know you kind of got quick and dirty answers from Habib, who had just done these studies. I don't think we're committed to always working with them.
Nope.
So do we anticipate this is going to stay around?
These
same?
study numbers are rough.
Yeah,
This was, you know, just hitting him up really quick and getting some numbers. These may alter a little bit. I don't think they're going to change by an order of magnitude.
okay.
But, you know, and we may also decide that, well, you know, it may not make sense to do all 5 schools of a study of a fire alarm because we're only going to be able to fund a couple of them in the fiscal year after that. So it might make sense to move some of the study to the next fiscal year to stagger out what we're doing so that the study doesn't become stale, particularly on fire alarm where there's code changes. So you're looking at, you know, this is what Habib suggested, you know, that's $2.6 million of work across 5 buildings, and it's pretty invasive work. You know, you couldn't do all that in one summer. So we may decide that, okay, let's do let's do the Anderson McGlynn this year so that we would be scheduling in FY28 to replace the systems. And then FY28, we study the 3 elementaries to do those in FY29. We may schedule that out a little bit. But I was trying to get everything out there that's a possible study.
That makes sense. Do we have a sense of which ones are going to be most urgent, or are they all equally urgent in this model? Because I see the study as a way of saying, okay, which are the priorities to make the upgrades?
By age, Anders and McGlynn are 2 years older than the other 2.
Okay.
The Roberts system has some problems. We're working
Just what I want to
those
hear with the
problems.
kid at the Roberts.
There are things we need to work on, but they're not,
Yeah.
you know, they're not critical things, but we're noticing that we're having trouble finding parts for that system. And that's a similar system to the other 2 elementaries. So by age, Andrews and McGlynn are older, but I haven't had the issues there. So they're different systems.
Okay, because the other thing that I would love to be aware of, big picture here, is if we're studying things and we're doing work in lots of different places, so that it's not, oh, well, the McGlynn is getting all the love and care. So to be able to stagger things in that way, I think is a good faith gesture to the community, obviously driven by urgent need, but
It's also the ability to get multiple projects at one building done at the same
yeah, exactly.
time. You know, you can only fit so much, as we learned with the HVAC, you can only get so many guys working at a time, you know, so.
Right.
And can you scroll down again? I just want to remind myself what's at the bottom. Intercom doors. Okay. Thank you.
And I think the other question I had about paving was these prices assume that we're going to contract out to do this paving work, right?
Correct.
Okay. And has there been any conversation with DPW about their ability to take this stuff on instead, or no, not yet?
There has not. There's not
Okay.
been this discussion. No.
Okay. I know they have their own backlog, and I'm quite certain it's enormous, and it does not include schools lots. So that may be a non-starter, but
Are you referring to streets or for municipal buildings?
well, they have a backlog for roads and sidewalks that is like 200 and something $million.
And a lot of that is probably farmed out to contractors.
Yes. However, we did just like
Yeah, but
fund a crew, right? And so that poor crew, like there's a lot of expectations about what that crew can reasonably do, at any given time. But I just didn't know if there had been any conversations about,
has not. But
okay.
I can certainly have that conversation with Tim McGivern, as well as, let's just say, we asked them to do the Brooks, parking lots and stuff. Given the size of their crew, how quickly could they do that in a summer? Because it's also, maybe a lot, farming it out may allow us to get it done and not impact the school as much, but comes at a cost, of course. But I can certainly have that conversation with them.
And
it would just maybe be helpful to understand like where that fits.
I also wonder though, if using the city would allow us to avoid procurement and bidding and all that other nonsense. I don't want to say nonsense, I said nonsense, but I mean all those other steps that
Hurdles.
thank you. Although, I mean, I don't know.
You'd have to procure the materials, but that's far easier than service, construction work. Not
Thank
dealing with, so yeah. And I'm sure they probably have state contracts they can leverage for asphalt and granite and other materials that they purchase. So
All right. So the money question, and although Member Graham, you look like you're about to say something.
My only other question was whether the Karen Theater railing deserved a slightly higher billing than that. And I just,
it may be
yes
something
and
we can
no.
put into the extraordinary repairs account.
Right.
But there's if I look back at the operating money, this was all in I'm sorry, wrong one. Operating here. I categorized $247,000 worth of work as operating work. So that's like probably 2 years worth of the extraordinary repairs plus other things that come in. So it's possible we could look through this and prioritize the work that's in here, slide some of the smaller items into the operating budget, like the railings, like the condenser replacement if it doesn't go. Some of those things could squeeze into there more easily.
Just stretch out that 2-year time frame to 3.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, got it. No, that's helpful.
Yep, that was going to be my question about what could get wrapped into the operating. And the point, I think, to the point of the Carillon Theater, we're looking at a new high school in the not too distant future. And so if this is a repair that needs to happen, it really doesn't make sense to put it off and only have this happen for 1 year.
Yeah, it's not a repair.
If I feel like it's do it soon or don't do it at all.
Yeah, the railings itself they don't exist now.
Right.
It's not a repair.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I know that space.
Too, so yeah.
Well, and I think to that point, Ken, maybe the question is whether there's an opportunity to do that in the FY26 extraordinary repair bucket.
Potentially, there's a lot of other stuff that's in there too, though. So I'm getting quotes and things on that, and we're still waiting the quote for this railing.
Okay.
I'm trying to get the company to give us that. It's been difficult, so.
Okay. So that would be the other sort of maybe variable to think about before we
We move it out.
Yes. Okay. Paul and Erica, what other questions do you have about prioritization?
Not prioritization, but I see that Mr. Tucci has put in things here that I feel like, why would that not be a thing that all the schools um, should probably need at the same time? And I'm not suggesting if they didn't ask that we should just do it, but I I'm just sensitive, and I know the other school committee members are. I'm just sensitive to, one school getting things and other schools needing them but not getting them. And the conversation after the fact, well, they never asked, doesn't really hold a lot of water with the people who will be complaining. So I just think that, I mean, I feel like as long as I've had kids in the schools, the complaints that the rugs are ancient and dirty, and there's lots of issues there, but
Yeah, how many donors choose projects are there for rugs?
exactly. So this is like one more thing for Ken to put on his very long to-do list, but there are certain items that, I mean, a rug in an elementary school and a kindergarten has a lifespan, and we shouldn't wait for complaints to decide it's that time. To just put them on a schedule, and well, I don't know how many, I have no clue how long it actually is. And I also worry about people buying rugs through donors choose, because fire code stuff, we can't just have anything in a class. And of course, if we're not buying it, I mean, I don't think it's fair to say, no, no, you got to buy only these allowed kinds to people who are doing a donors choose to get a new rug. Um, and I feel like we're talking about a rug, even though we're talking about many millions of dollars here, but they're expensive. The ones that meet fire codes for schools and all that stuff. So
I think that's actually maybe a bigger conversation for the next term, which is we have lots of entities that buy things on behalf of classrooms and schools, right? Like our PTOs are very active in that way. And one of like my huge frustrations from my time on the PTO before I was elected to the school committee is we would purchase things and turn them over and then they would not be maintained, right? Or we would turn them over and then the with some like handshake agreement that never was fulfilled. Like there was a year where we bought a new rug for every classroom teacher, and the ask was, can they just be cleaned every year in the summer? And then they never got cleaned. So I think there's like a bigger quest. There's like something a little bit broader there about how to collaborate with people who are trying to help us in a like full circle kind of way, right? Like that they because nobody wants to buy things for us that we shouldn't have, right? But people don't know. And so how do we create an easy like pathway for that to happen and to understand like what is coming into the universe of like essentially our like expectation of maintenance that we need to know about, because I don't think we have a good line of sight of what those things are. And then there's just all kinds of questions about, well, like, I don't know where that came from, or I don't know who's supposed to do that thing. And we could like sort of tighten up all of that process a little bit for sure. Upcoming.
One thing to keep in mind about the McGlynn is the seating and the rug replacement has a direct correlation to the amount of outside rentals we have in there. You have a massive rental in there every single weekend that's adding a ton more wear and tear to that building than any other building.
So that's maybe looking at looking at rental rates in community schools, and
Yeah.
that's a Rob question as well. But I think that's fair. And I know some of the rental groups have contributed to like the lighting system at the McGlynn, and we're looking at a donation for the audio system from a group of caregivers, but
Yeah, and I think that is like another thing for us to consider talking about in the next term in terms of like what, what are people paying for rentals and how are we managing all of that in a consistent way? And does it cover, like, it's one thing to cover, the cost of like the maintenance and the custodial who are on site when they're there. That's like one cost, but then there's like what it costs to heat and power the building. And then there's like, yet another cost about wear and tear. And all of these things happen faster when we have like heavy rental use. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't want our schools to be used in this way because I think it's great. It just has to not disadvantage like the mission of the schools at the same time, right? So there's a big conversation to have there as well.
I'm actually very excited to have that conversation.
Are you?
Uh, I am, just because I think we do appreciate a lot of the partnerships, and definitely schools are community spaces, but I do think we need some clarity added to the use of our schools, and down to the how and the when and the how much and the why definitely needs to be a conversation so that we're adding more clarity to that. I think the McGlynn has seen a lot of wear and tear. I think there's also like protective coating that is on the stage pretty much 24/7 to protect the wood of the stage. But I think just that overall conversation definitely needs to be had.
Yeah.
is that building and grounds subcommittee, is that an offline conversation? Is that this group? I'm not sure it's this group.
Well, I don't know what group it is actually, but I also think the groups are subject to change.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what we're organizing for
Yeah.
next.
Yeah, I think we should have that conversation and figure out who, how the upcoming committee wants to organize.
I mean, because there's an argument for splitting strategic and capital planning into two, given the strategic planning process that's about to come
Sure.
online.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a separate conversation, not on the agenda. So I guess we're back to the priorities here.
So are there any other questions or objections?
No,
to
I
this?
think just to identify which of these, right, if we're looking at staggering some of these studies, to highlight which ones come first, and then if there's another study that needs to happen, maybe that doesn't have that time urgency constraint, then the schools that aren't getting the urgent ones get the other study and flip-flop in subsequent fiscal years.
Right. So are there other so I think there's some numbers that we're still trying to refine. So I'm thinking December 15th is still the right date for us to bring this forward. But not sure if there's anything else that you all are thinking about that we need to talk about before we feel like we're ready to bring this forward to the committee. And or if we need to try to shoehorn another meeting in to have more discussion. So I don't know how you all are feeling about where we're at.
I mean, last year we had two meetings, and the second one before we presented to the whole committee, and the second one was about projecting out, saying these are the things we've chosen for this year, and in context, here's what's coming and why we've prioritized these. So I think that needs to happen. I do think it would be good for this group to be on the same page in presenting that. But I am also aware that December 15th is less than a month away, and we've got Thanksgiving and all sorts of other things. But
We do have. I'm
We
just
do
looking.
have this committee to meet to, I think, discuss intra-district policies.
Mhm. On December 8th. And I'm sort of wondering if, like, we use that time to have a second conversation about this and we move the intra-district into January and figure out like where its proper home is, as potentially the subcommittees change, because I don't really foresee that we could pull off an intra-district policy in December 2025 at this point. So do we want to?
I mean, the reason that was,
that
sorry,
out a
your
little
tea
bit?
is being loud.
Oh, sorry, Erica, what were you saying?
No. Did you hear the siren? I muted because
No.
okay. There was a roaring siren heading down the street. As I recall, we scheduled the intra-district enrollment policy in order to beat the kindergarten registration so that we had that information in place as soon as people started asking questions about why are they registered for a school that's not in their backyard. Am I right about that, Dr. Galusi? That was our motivation.
I'm not. I think there were a couple pieces of motivation. I think some of this did come out from the enrollment and overcrowding subcommittee report that I gave in May, because some of the interdistrict transfers were around, at least that I was a part of as when I gave that presentation, was around because we were not able to have full capacity of after school care. So a lot of the interdistrict transfers were childcare related for after school. And then there was the piece around interdistrict transfers for keeping families together for specialized separate programming.
Right, but was kindergarten registration, was that our deadline or did I just hallucinate that? Was that a deadline? It doesn't sound
You
like.
may not have. I don't remember that hard deadline.
Yeah, I don't remember kindergarten
Okay.
registration either. I mean, certainly before we start, those inter-district conversations tend to happen closer to the end of the
Yeah.
school year. So I think we have a little bit of time. I'm not thinking of anything that has to
No, I
happen
think it
before
was just kindergarten registration, but I think there is a window there.
Okay.
Well, I know
So
later
if that's
this
not
year-
urgent, then I'm fine
No.
to use the December 8th meeting for this since it's on the calendar.
Okay. Perfect.
I
My
would-
calendar is really miserable, so I'm glad to not have to find another hour.
I would just ask that we, when we're ready for the presentation at school committee, that we give a, 90-second primer on what does it mean to be net school spending eligible and all this other stuff, because if anything, it's important, but it's also not exactly intuitive. So just a note for the presentation when we do get to it.
Yeah, I am thinking in terms of next steps. Ken and I can work on sort of forming this into like maybe two things, right? One is like, here's what was previously funded in a status. Second is, here's the recommendation and how it lays out for FY27 forward. And then maybe there's like another part of like describing like one, maybe if we do it one time, we don't have to do it every year, like those things exactly, Member Rousseau, like here's our like as a reminder, here's our like little visual process and here's what these things mean, so that if we can get that right one time, it's going to work for all the times, right, that people have these questions. So I'm wondering if those are maybe the two things that need to happen before the 8th. I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer for number 2.
What was number 2?
Like outlining like what is our capital planning process and what are these like important like terms and definitions, just so that
Was it the process and these are the buckets where things come from and why they can go in one bucket and not in another?
Yeah.
Just looking up the policy.
I remember Jerry gave, Mr. McHugh gave us a lovely briefer on that.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking like if we write it down in a something visual one time, it will be better than if we talk about it 10 times.
I think that I can handle that with Will and the finance office.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
when you look at the policy, we did not update it, but there is one date, I believe, or maybe a couple of dates that are not. When we did this last year, there was a date or two that were sort of not possible or feasible or whatever the words were. So just keep that in mind when you look at the dates in the actual policy, that you might not want to freak out about how, wait, we can't do that. Can't meet that date. I think it was getting the target date we have is February 28th. And
For the
well,
budget, not for capital, right?
no, this is the capital improvement planning policy.
So I think last year we ended up way ahead of the schedule because I think the policy says have a committee of the whole and then have a vote. And we did that all in one meeting. And so we were done in December last year when I think we weren't scheduled to be done until before that.
Yeah, the budget calendar definitely shifted because of
Okay.
override.
Thank you. That's right. The budget was the thing that moved. not
Because
the-
it was, there was a sudden infusion of funds that we maybe didn't want to rush through allocating.
Great. Thank you. So do look at the policy then.
I was like, I think we beat the clock on this one. Okay. So Ken, I'll connect with you and we can like ship this out and then, put that visual together and then we should be in good shape. And I am thinking we can probably do this in one meeting again, instead of trying to have a committee of the whole and then a meeting to take the vote.
Yeah, I think we won't have Teresa, the CPA's best guess at how they would treat these applications by then,
You can put that just in the comments.
which is fine. I think if that's the one piece we're missing, we're in good shape.
Yeah.
And if I may,
Sure.
I can have an administrative conversation with our chairperson to see what her gut is too, if that is at all helpful. I think it would still need to go before our committee for a vote on an official stance of how they would accept the application. But if that's at all helpful, I can get
It is for mapping purposes and it can get tweaked if the official vote doesn't match, but I think 2 gut checks is a great
okay,
start.
perfect. All right, I'll get that from her and send along an official memo from us and from me and the chairperson.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to comment on how much I appreciate the administration's work on this. I'm just remembering when I joined the school committee and the differences between now and then are beyond stark in what we are in what we understand about the state of things. And knowing knowing's half the battle, but knowing is certainly required to even go to battle on these numbers. So I'm beyond thankful and very excited to find this money.
Yeah, and extra thanks to Ken for diving in and jumping on this. This is a delight of a view of what we're doing.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Bedford Public Schools is very lucky to have Ken Lord.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that's it. It's only 5:11.
Okay.
Said he sent.
I have a little time before my next meeting.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second
By
that.
Member Reinfeld, seconded by Member Rousseau. I'll call the roll. Member Reinfeld,
Yes.
Member Rousseau,
Yes.
Member Graham, yes. 3 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion is adjourned. Meeting is adjourned.